video too. Greetings, everybody. So good to have you here tonight. Is this on? Can you hear me? All right, it's good. I am so happy to have Shmuel Junger here. I met him in Tennessee a few months ago, and he's the one who took over Sandra Barris's place with the Christian Friends of Israel communities. And I just love him. I just he has a real heart. He really does. He has a heart for Hashem. I'm just so glad that he loves Israel. And one of the things that I just wanted to say too, he has been a lawyer for a long time. He taught in a Jewish school in Hong Kong for 4 years. He was in the military. And how long were you in the military? 3 years. But we are really blessed to have someone like Shmuel Junger here with us. And we welcome all of you all over the United States, all around the world. And I can hardly wait to hear him tell us what's on his heart. And I know he's going to tell us about CFOIC. Really, I mean, it's amazing. I've been doing this for 25 years, and I had such a hard time finding rabbis that wanted to talk to Christians. And all of a sudden, it just started blooming and happening like crazy. And as you know, here at El Shaddai, we have a wonderful connections with many Orthodox Jewish rabbis. And not many people get to hear an Orthodox Jewish rabbi speak in our communities. But I'm just thrilled to have him here, and let's give a big welcome.
Wow. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me. What a blessing. So it's interesting. So I talk to the people here, and I talk to the cameras, and I talk to the screens. Don't know where he's going to take me. I'll try my best. And I'm really happy and privileged to be here. Just because, I feel that I am in a room, I'm in a web, in a video with people around the world that support Israel. And I told the pastor, yes, absolutely. And I told the pastor that every time, still, when I travel and I get to a place, and for me, this area is the middle of nowhere. For me, I was born and raised in Israel, and I'm an Israeli. And for us, when we think about the world outside, we tend to see or to think that the world doesn't like us, doesn't support us. To be honest, with numbers, it is true. The majority of the world does not support us. Now in the war, and at all time, the feeling is that we are isolated. We are standing there by ourselves. And then you travel somewhere in the world, and I'm privileged to doing it for a couple of years now. And I get to a place in the middle of nowhere, as I said, and there's a home, there's a house, there's an American flag, and there's an Israeli flag outside. And I enter the room, and usually I see Israel flags all over. And then you get the realization that I'm standing here talking to you guys, and I'm talking to, I don't know how many around the world are going to watch this video, and yet it's not going to be on the news. The people of Israel won't know about this happening today, about you guys came tonight on a Monday night to hear about Israel. On the other side, if 5 clowns are going to stand on a bridge in the downtown here with a couple of flags of Palestine, that's going to be on the news. And they're going to talk about, look about the demonstrations, and look of where we're going. So this is a painful situation we have. Therefore, when we come here, and when we see the support, and we see the love, it changes everything for us. It's crucial to understand. I know this group is going to come with Pastor Mark on September to Israel. And you think to yourself, in the middle of the war, are you crazy? So first of all, you should know, that's what you said, okay. First of all, you should know, a lot of Israel won't be able to be exposed. But wherever you're going to go, you will see something very interesting. You will see eyes of people lighting up because they see you and you're not Israelis. And that means that this group thought to come and support and care and show solidarity with me, with Israel at this time. It blows our mind. It's something that is not normal. So the first thing I want to say is to encourage you, my friends, to continue to do what you do, to support and stand with Israel. It means a lot to us as Israelis. And now we can start the talk. So, my name is Shmuel Junger. Shmuel is the Hebrew way to say Samuel. People ask me, do you want to repeat it? Shmuel. Yeah, you're good. Very good. One try, you made it. And the book of Samuel, like I'm on his name, and it means not necessarily listen to the voice of God, but when Hannah, Samuel's mother, said, I've asked God for him. That's the interpretation. I know you're about Hebrew as well, so I'm giving you this as well. And I'm standing here today representing the organization that you all know of, CFOIC. And probably many of the people watching it right now, Christian friends of Israeli communities, they know it because we've been around for many, many years, like you guys. And you've been around here doing the work of supporting the biblical heartland of Israel, meaning Judea and Samaria. And for many people, Judea and Samaria is a word that contradicts because they hear on the news something about the West Bank or occupied territories. Have you heard of the term? We are talking about Judea and Samaria, the biblical heartland, and we're explaining and we're connecting with a very basic understanding how you cannot disconnect Judea and Samaria and the story of what happens in Israel. And it will never be occupied territories, and it will never be something that we took which is not ours. I'm going to get to the story of Judea and Samaria soon, but I want to start with the obvious. Friends, it's very difficult in Israel right now. Very challenging time. Devastated. People are brokenhearted. When you're going to be in Israel in September, you will see it's not the same. I'm telling you, you will see faces that are broken. Hearts are broken. What we experienced on the 7th of October was nothing less than the most shocking, horrible nightmare since the establishment of Israel. The biggest, strongest attack. And it didn't finish then. Because since then, we are bleeding and we're losing soldiers almost on a daily basis. Young heroes leaving their family and fighting for our nation, and they're dead. And it's a big loss, and it's a feeling that we have in Israel. It's like maybe a cloud over us. And it doesn't let go so quickly. I want to try to show you maybe this. Try to maybe get to explain what we're going through from a perspective of history. So this is my wife's grandmother. And she was one of the people who came to the city of Hebron in 1929. Long ago, almost 100 years ago, before Israel was established. There was always a dream to come back to the land. And some people that were extra strong, with a lot of vision, they came and settled the holy cities of Jerusalem, of Hebron, Tzfat, and Tiberias. But they lived there in a situation where they could not protect himself. And this lady showcasing exactly the situation, because in 1929 there was a massacre, a famous massacre in Hebron. You're nodding your head, but you should think about it, that this massacre in Hebron, compared with what happens on the 7th of October, it's going to be erased from memory. It's nothing to compare. And this family, my wife's family, came to Hebron to establish families of rabbis. And there was a massacre. One day, the local Arabs decided, let's kill the Jews. And they stood up, and everybody hides in the rabbi's home. They thought they're gonna protect them because, as a religious person figure, it didn't help so much. In the photo, it's her younger brother. And the family, many casualties, but this lady survives, her brother survives. And whenever there was bad times in Israel, throughout the 90s, because she lived until 2010, she would always say, whatever you see happening around us here, all the attacks, all the intifada, we live in Samaria, of course, it's nothing to compare. You know why? Because of one important thing that I want you to remember and to start to reflect about. There was one thing that behind the curtains of history and prophecies coming true, there was one thing that's changed when Israel was established, and that's the fact that it was the first time we can protect ourselves. As a nation, not hoping for God to help us or the local sheriff. You can hold a sword or you can hold a weapon and you can protect your people. And the reason why I'm showing you this is because on the 7th of October, this very basic rule didn't happen. On the 7th of October, we could not protect our people to the extent the feeling was that we don't have a country. For a couple of hours, the army, the intelligence, the government, nobody was around. So the 7th of October brings me back to this memory. Every Saturday morning, I sit with my friend and we learn. We learn Torah. 7:30 to 8:30, and then there's the prayer, a morning prayer. So you remember the 7th of October was Simchat Torah, and it was Shabbat. So naturally, when we're sitting there at 7:30 in the morning, we don't know what's happening in the south. At 8:30, when we finished, people come to pray and tell us something is happening there. A couple of hours later, my wife tells me that I should go and visit my friend's home because his daughter, Avia, was in the party, the Nova party. When I arrived there, it's 11 o'clock in the morning. There's no sign of her. She texts us a message at 9 o'clock in the morning saying, I'm okay, but since there, lost connection. For a week, they were searching for her. In the hospitals, the refrigerators, many of the bodies could not be recognized. Saturday after, when I come to his home, 7:30 on a regular learning after a week of prayers, when the two options are she's dead or she's kidnapped. And I enter the home and he tells me, just a couple of hours before that, I was told she died. She was murdered. The second thing that happened on the 7th of October was, number one, we said the country was gone in a sense. And number two, every person in Israel felt it on a personal level. There wasn't a single person in Israel that could avoid this huge massacre. 1,300 people in one day. In a small country, that means you know somebody. And if you don't know him personally, your family member knows him, or he's from your town, or from your community. And this is the daughter of one of my best friends, Avia, 22 and a half years old. And the third thing that happened on that morning of the 7th of October, which made it such a big deal for us, and I'm saying it a big deal because I feel that from distance it looked like maybe we continued with our lives, but we did not continue with our lives. Because what happened, the third realization was, it's only the beginning. On that morning when we see the attack from the south, when they're able to penetrate $3.5 billion obstacle, we understand in a minute that the next will be from the north, from Hezbollah, as it does, constant attack and missiles. Somebody here just before I started told me that he downloaded the app that tells you when there's a missile. Who said that? No stop, right? No stop. Day and night. Nobody lives in the north anymore, you know? They evacuated more than 250,000 people. Nobody lives in the north. When you come to visit, you can't go. It's all fire, burns, and missiles over it. But it's not only from the north. Who is the new enemy in the neighborhood? Yemen. What? Yemen? Seriously? And of course, above all of it, in the Iraq and Lebanon is the one who deals with all of it, controls all of it, and planning all of it. I'm talking obviously about Iran. Now you want an extra level? I told you I'm from Samaria, Judea and Samaria. We here visited Judea and Samaria. So you know very well that for us, the enemy is in within. We live side by side with Arab villages of Palestinians. And in every survey they say, we are pro-Hamas. We want to have the opportunity to do the same massacre again. They're trying. They've been trying for years. When Sandra used to come here, I'm sure that's what she would say. She would talk about the constant attacks in our region. It's funny, because on the 7th of October, everything changed. Before that, we were the dangerous zone. We were the people that need to protect their lives. That Christian Friends of Israeli Communities for 25 years been donating how to protect the lives of the settlers, of the people living in the area, surrounded by hostile villages. I always mention, my son drives to school on a bulletproof bus. Not since the 7th of October. Always. We are that zone. Now, think about this component for a second. You wake up on the 7th of October. You understand what happened in the south. Half of the community men left to fight. They need to go to the south, to the north. And I got a phone call from a friend from my synagogue tells me, brother, if something happens in our community, make sure to bring my wife and my kids to your shelter. People felt like they're abandoning their community to fight on the borders, when we all remember what it was in the south when people had to protect their families and their homes. When people had to fight against the enemy inside their own home. And if they were able to pass $3.5 billion obstacle, what's the problem to go through a lousy fence that separates us, and sometimes we don't even have this fence? Do you understand the horrible situation and the mindset people got on the 7th of October? And this is one person from one community. And I'm talking about this situation all around Israel. But the topic of today is Judea and Samaria. And I explained why the fear and the tension And the attempts are real in our region. The devastating situation and the results of the 7th of October would be something that we cannot forget for the rest of our life. You're probably going to go and see it on September. They didn't touch it. It's a nightmare. Everything is burned, everything is destroyed. A massacre is an undermining what happened there. And of course, let's not forget the hostages. More than 200 that day. All this in mind, and we ask ourselves, how? Why? Where was the army? Where was our intelligence? The answers are going to come in the end, but I want to try to give you a new perspective to look at it. Because the way I see this room, heard about this, saw it, learned it, and heard lectures about it from so many people, and I try to give here something new. And I try to really reflect about what made the difference and how we were fooled. How didn't we see what's being orchestrated in front of our eyes? I want to show you now a short video. I'm not going to show any horrible things today. It's a soundbite of a conversation made by a terrorist entering a community, calling his parents. You heard of this? It's the moment you realize when you get this phone call to say to your parents, I'm so proud of something I just did. That's the phone call.
يابا انا قاعد بكلمك من جوبا بسيم. افتح الواتس تبع قول له وين شوف كيف القتله، شوف كيف قتلت بيدي يابا، ابنك قتل يهود، هاي دخل مفلسين يابا. يابا قاعد بكلمك من جوال يهوديه قتلتها وقتلت جوزها، 10 بيدي يابا قتلت 10 يابا، 10 بيدي قتلت يابا. افتح الواتس شوف كيف قتلت يابا، افتح بتدفع عليك واتس قول له وين بروح يابا. انتم مفلسين يابا، يابا والله 10 قتلت، 10 بيدي يابا، دمهم على ايدي. اعطينا امي والله ب10 بيدي يابا، كمان 10 يلا بيدي قتلت. يلا طلع اصفر هو يصفر.
This is the call. You received this call, you made this call when you did something amazing. When you finished, when you graduated, when you proposed, when you got married, when you had your first kid, anything that made your parents proud of you. And this is the different culture, of course. This is what you're giving the phone call to your parents to say, oh, be so proud of me. And they are indeed so proud of him. And the level of madness is clear after you hear this next short interview with one of the head of the Hamas speaking in Europe, explaining in the very simple, easy way what went wrong and how did they fool the Israelis. I'm looking for one question. What's the challenge and the problem we Israelis Jews have that makes us fall again and again and forget who are we dealing with?
وحماس سلوكها في السنتين الماضيات انه عقلاني وما بتدخل في حروب وما وقفت مع الجهاد الاسلامي في معركته السابقه او انه دعمته من بعيد لبعيد، فالكل صار يقول حماس مشغوله.
لكن هاي كانت ضمن استراتيجيه
طبعا انه حماس مشغوله بالحكومه في غزه وبدها تدير بالها على 1.5 مليون فلسطيني وملتهيه وخلص تركت المقاومه، لكن حماس من تحت الطاوله كانت تحضر لهذه العمليه الكبيره. قديش بيتحمل الاسرائيلي؟ اكثر من اسبوعين ما بيتحمل. احنا بنتحمل، احنا عم نقاتل عن ارضنا وشعبنا ومقدساتنا، واحنا مش خايفين. نقاتل مدبرين، نستشهد مدبرين. بخاف من الأسر وبخاف يموت. الإسرائيلي معروف عنه أنه بحب الحياة، إحنا بنضحي، نعتبر أنه قتلانا شهداء. فأمنا يعني أهم أمنية عند أي واحد فلسطيني أنه يستشهد في سبيل الله
يعني
دفاعا عن أرضه.
لا يوجد أي سقف زمني لهذه العملية، عملية طوفان الأقصى.
محضرين حالنا لهي المعركة وحاسبين حساب إنها قد تطول، ومحضرين حالنا إن سنتين عم نحضر ومنرتب، وصنعنا كتير وعندنا مصانع كل شيء. عندنا من صواريخ 250 كيلو ل 160 كيلو ل 80 كيلو ل 45 كيلو ل 10 كيلو. عندنا مصانع هاونات وقذائفها.
You have it. What's our problem? According to this guy, we love life. Absolutely. That's the challenge. When you love life. And this is the biggest culture difference and gap between this culture who praise death and a culture who loves life. The culture who praises life, who wants to bring blessing to the world, good to the world. When you're fighting a nation and when you're fighting a culture that if they die, they win. If they kill you on the process, they win even better. That's what we need to deal with. I don't know what happens to this guy on the video. Maybe he's dead already because this is something in the beginning of the war. But I know one thing. The war in Gaza that started in the 7th of October was something we was supposed to be doing a long time ago. And the truth is, it's rooted in a culture that we helped to develop when we left the area in 2005. You know, Israeli soldier with the flag on their hand came to take their brothers and sisters from their homes in Gush Katif. In that area, because we thought, because we love life, that this is going to be peace. I remember they talked about it. They said it's going to be the Singapore of the Middle East. Billions of dollars were given to develop this area from all over the world. Billions of dollars were invested to build a new city, an underground city. The money that was given to develop the place was used to make this area the nightmare it is right now. They don't care about their people. They invested in the tunnels. And we weren't there. The obstacle of peace. We left, and ever since that moment, we receive missiles, we receive tunnels, we receive more and more horrible place to damage us. I'm thinking about the balloons with the fire they would throw over the fence. Sometimes they had a bird also training to burn areas. Vicious evil. So what have we learned? I'm presenting this to you, and it's not news. This is the reality of what we went through, and you know all of it. But as Israelis, we went through such a trauma, and we felt like everything we hoped for, prayed for all those years is almost fading away from us. So what have we learned after the 7th of October? It took some time to realize we were asleep, but we woke up. And woke in a way that's completely different than the term being used here for woke. The 8th of October, people in Israel stood up and understood they need to take care of all the things the soldiers who went to war abandoned. We had people from the south and from the north evacuated from their homes. We had 350,000 people, reserve soldiers, going to fight. And I want to take a minute and realize this. In Israel, When pastor asked me how long did I've served, the answer is 3 years. You serve for 3 years, but you think it's done, it's finished. It's not. Because then you're being called for reserve. I have friends, 40 plus years old, with 4, 5, and 6 children that since the 7th of October are still in reserve fighting. You know what it means? You leave your family, you leave your job, you leave all your plans, and you fight like a soldier who's 18. Can you understand the amount of pressure for the family when father is away? Not for a week or two, for a business trip. For 4, 5, and 6, and 7 months and more. The amount of things, the amount of support those families needed. I'm not going to go into the hundreds of orphans that was left after reserve soldiers died. A lot of them had families, 4, 5, 6 kids. Never happened to us before in any war that so many family members were killed. Every Israeli woke up on the 8th of October understanding he need to volunteer and to do something. And they did. And we found this courage inside of people and how people were so devoted for their nation that Israelis stopped wherever they were in the world, flew to fight. I'm going to show you one example of this soldier. Amichai Israel Oster. His name sounds familiar. Why? This is Sandra's nephew. Sandra's nephew was here in a after army trip, like many Israelis do. Was not far from him in Utah. He heard of this, the 7th of October. The next day, he was on a fight. Unfortunately, killed in Gaza in January.
Finally, tonight from here in Tel Aviv, Americans answering the call to action by rushing to Israel to help with relief efforts and to help fight Hamas. Here's Marissa Para.
Outside an Israeli airline ticket counter at Miami International Airport, pockets of emotion on full display before a 12-hour flight to Israel. Everyone here packing a different story.
Half of my relatives and friends went to the festival. I'm going to the funeral.
The hugs here last a little longer. Most don't know when they'll get another.
I'm numb, like a lot of people are right now.
That's Zach, the father of an IDF reservist, one of hundreds of thousands of Israeli reservists being called to duty, some boarding planes before the call even comes.
He found out about the war at 7 and he was on the plane by 11 o'clock.
Nata Nagli's home has been empty for over a week. She drove her son David to the airport with a one-way ticket to Israel.
I gave him a little box with a bug inside, and it says love bug, and this is something that he gave me. So I took my little love bug and I gave it to David. And when he hugged me goodbye, he said, "Mom, I promise I'm gonna bring the love bug back."
At the airport, people preparing themselves and more. Suitcases being packed and shipped from around the state.
Everything from certified tourniquets that units have requested specifically to things like magazine pouches. And I think the trucks are here, so we have to run.
Supplies being rushed onto the plane just before departure.
What does it say on these suitcases right here?
It says, Am hanetzach lo mefached.
What does that mean?
It means that the Jewish nation is not scared.
This is a flight of promises hand-delivered.
This is not a time to be frightened. It's a time to be strong.
Marissa Para, NBC News, Miami.
It looks so far, so long ago. But this is me landing in Ben Gurion 3 weeks after the beginning of this war. Suitcases, duffel bags, waiting for people to carry them out, for soldiers to take them. It's a war that needed a lot of gear. And you ask yourself, what, the IDF wasn't ready? The main reason why we had to have so many gears and so much equipment coming is because the reserve units called soldiers And every time, half of the people are outside of Israel, students, the wife just gave birth, they're sick. So you have 70, 80% of average coming. At this war, they had 110% coming. Because people from all over the world that lost contact years ago reached in, we come, we need to fight for our existence. Regular people, ordinary people had to fight for their lives. Another Amichai, my nation alive, Schindler, lost his hand. You know those shelter rooms you have in the homes in Israel? He had to fight with the knob for 6 hours against terrorists, shooting, throwing a grenade, and suddenly burning the room. Heavily injured, and yet saved his family. You heard, or you saw her for sure. Rachel from Ofakim. Story of courage, almost insane. The terrorist comes to her home. And she's a lady originally from Egypt. She knows Arabic. And when they come, she stops them and she says to them, "You look very pale. Maybe sit and drink something." And for a couple of hours, she's able to make them sit, relax, and cook fresh food until the SWAT team came. The wisdom of a woman, hospitality. A hero. Heroes. We found so many stories of heroes that already I know of 7 books released gathering them. 2 sets of brothers, not living in the area of the south, understood something happens, they don't think twice, and they go. I want to take a moment about talking about the 2 people down there. Elchanan Kalmanzon, the person on the left. He lives in the northern mountains of Hebron, in Otniel. His father is the rabbi of Yeshivat Otniel. And he hears something happen in the south. He doesn't think twice. And he says to his brother, "Let's go." They wear uniforms, but it's not their job. And when they enter the community of Be'eri, one of the communities that suffered the most, they see a lot of soldiers outside. And they ask what's happening inside. They say there are still terrorists inside their homes. It's already nighttime, the night between the 7th and the 8th. So they're asking, what about all the people, all the families? They are in the safe room, the one that survived, for 18 hours now? The soldiers say, what can we do? There are terrorists inside. It's a madhouse. Elchanan, his brother, and his nephew say, we will go and take them. And they're going home after home, knocking on the door, entering the home, trying to convince the people to come out of the shelters. We rescued you. And they share that many of the homes did not believe they're Israelis. So they had to shout, Shema Israel, for them to believe they're Jews and Israel is in the other side. They rescue 80 people from their shelters while terrorists are shooting above their head. They say the youngest was 8 months old and the oldest was 80. After 18 hours in the shelter, unfortunately, Elchanan enters one of the home and gets shot by a terrorist, and he dies there. Heroes. As I said, so many heroes were exposed that day. And to reflect on all the casualties and all the pain and everything people gave to this nation, I want to show you a short video by somebody who gave the most precious thing, her husband. She's a mother for 6. And she's going to talk about her husband. And she's going to say in a very, very simple way how the person we saw 30 minutes ago, the terrorist that blamed us for one problem. What was our problem? We love life. He was right. Listen to her. The reason why I show her, and I'm not saying it, is because if I would say it, you wouldn't believe.
So my name is Hadass Lowenstern, and we will be talking about my righteous husband, Elisha. First of all, Elisha, he was the love of my life. We spent 13 beautiful years together. We have 6 children. My oldest is 12 and a half. He will have his bar mitzvah a week before Rosh Hashanah. And my youngest is a 10 months old baby, a baby girl. And we were so happy together. We had a wonderful life. And we did many things together. My husband was a big Talmid Chacham. Actually, he did so many things in his life. I can say a few. He translated the Gemara Steinsaltz into English, and he used to tutor bar mitzvah, secular bar mitzvah boys here in Israel for their bar mitzvahs, and he would study Rambam Yomi, the daily Rambam, and he was in charge of our schedule here in our shul. And he used to work out. He would get up 4 times a week. He would get up before Vatikin to run. He had time for everything that was important, which was a very rare thing that I saw in him. He did not waste time. He did not waste time at all. He would do sit-ups. So he had this app that you can do, let's say 50 sit-ups, and then you have a minute, you have like a stopwatch. You have a minute to rest between sets. So within this minute, he would get up. He had an open Mishnayot. He would learn Mishnayot for a minute. And then when the app called him back, he would go back, do the squats or whatever, the push-ups or whatever. And then he had another minute. He would learn Mishnayot for a minute. On the 7th of October, when you all know what happened here in Israel, and we told each other, okay, this is wartime, and you have to go. We have to be there. So he left the house right after Simchat Torah. He left the house and he went to fight. They were there for about a week, maybe 10 days. I don't know, because we couldn't talk. Ever since he left the house, like 10 weeks ago, 10 weeks before he died, he called me twice. We had about a minute to talk. He told me that he is killing a lot of bad guys, that he is fighting b'shem Hashem, that he is very happy to have the privilege to defend Am Yisrael and Eretz Yisrael. He was very, very happy, and we were both very confident, because this is not a private story. This is not about Hadass Lowenstern or about Elisha Lowenstern. This is about the Jewish nation, and this is about our enemies trying to kill us throughout history. My husband was the first tank to go into the south part of the Gaza Strip. There were soldiers who got into this problem there, and they got injured. So Elisha tried to go and rescue them with his tank, and they shot at him, and they hurt him. Talking about his death is so shuli in my eyes, because he only died once, but he lived every day. So telling you how my husband died, he died. Hashem decided that my husband will die. That's Hashem's decision. I can't change it. But I am alive, and my 6 kids are alive. And this is our plan. We plan on living such a wonderful life that the bad guys will never be zoche to live. We will live here in Eretz Yisrael, and we will study Torah, and we will lekayem mitzvot, and we will be a happy Jewish family. And this is the true victory, in my eyes, b'chol mikre. in our watches, there is a time difference. Right here in Israel, the time is whatever, and you have time differences with us. But in our hearts, there are no time differences. And we love you so much. And we feel you. We feel you davening for us. We feel you praying for us. We feel you not speaking Lashon Hara for us. And we feel you having the best time with your kids for us. And we feel you jogging for us. Whatever you do there, far away, we feel it right here in Israel. And Bezrat Hashem, we will all be together. When Mashiach comes, we will all be together here in Yerushalayim. And I will give all of you such a huge hug, like the hugest hug ever.
You wouldn't believe me if I would say that. But this is a real person. In February, I went to Australia. There's a shout out now to my friend Pam, the representative in Australia who watches it live. Hi, Pam. And I showed it to a group, and one of the ladies says to me in the end, it's my dream to meet her. Adas, the lady. I said, you know what? Come to Israel. I'll introduce you. I don't know her. But Israel, it's a big family. So I call her, get her number, and I call her. And that's her word. She says, what? From Australia? Of course. Bring her. And we're sitting there in her living room, the same living room when you saw him dancing with her kids. And she's sitting there and sitting with 3 non-Jewish ladies from Australia. And she asked one question. Why did you want to see me? The ladies say, of course, because you give us power. So the answer she gives to them is, knowing that people in Australia and in the world get power from what I say is great. But understanding that what she says represents so many thousands and thousands of incredible ladies and families that gave up the most precious thing in their personal life, like she said, in the name of the story of the Jewish people. This is not a story of individuals. In a story of individual, it's a devastating story. In a story of a nation that waited to 2,000 years to come back to the land, it's only another break in the wall. And that's the story that we are always saying when we talk about Judea and Samaria. She said, we love life. We will continue to live our life. And the question always shouts out, we're talking about Judea and Samaria now, where I live, 500,000 people. You visited there. To say it's a safe place, I wouldn't say that. You remember the story. In 1948, Israel is established. And this is the time to open the small booklets you have, just as a reminder. Surely you remember this. You know it. And we have this. It's page 12. And we have this awful UN resolution that talks about you're going to get the blue part and they're going to get the orange part. They, the Transjordanian. Now you ask yourself, why did we say yes to such a lousy deal? So just to understand why was it such a lousy deal, you need to understand the crucial element of what went through our mind. Listen to this. Personal note. I come from an interesting family. An average, though. My mother was born in Tunisia and moved to France. My grandfather from my mother's side was born in Algeria. From my father's side, my grandfather was born in Czechoslovakia, Holocaust survivor. My grandmother, she's a Palestinian. She was born in Israel before 48. My father was born in Colombia. They moved there. I was born in Israel. My kids were born in Hong Kong. How many countries? You put the two grandfathers I never met in one room. You know they cannot talk to one another? They don't speak the same language. They don't look the same. They don't eat the same food. There's no connection on the surface. But of course there is a connection. What's the connection? Their tradition, their faith, their God, their belief. And you know what's the thing that connects every Jew, regardless where they came from in the planet, in the universe? Is that every Jew, his mother told him that one day we will return to our land. For 2,000 years of exile, tonight, tomorrow morning, it's the 17th day of Tammuz. It's a fast day. When we're going to remember the 3 weeks of the destruction of the temple, 2,000 years, all over the world, people fasted and waited. They knew they're in exile, and they waited for the moment that one day they will go back to the land. How did they know they were going to be back in the land? What made them feel that? Because the prophet says so. And every mother told her son, no, one day, the prophet said so. It's going to take 100, 200, took 2,000 years. And when the kids asked, where are we going to go in that land? Surely the places that she mentioned are the places of the Bible. So you can see it very clearly. It's just 2 pages before that. You can go with me and see. It's in page 6. Places like Dothan, where Joseph was thrown to the pit. Places like Shechem, when Abraham was promised the land, where Joseph is buried, where the mount of blessing, the mount of curse. I know you left this place. You go there every time, right? This is where the covenant started, of course. Then you have Bethel, where Jacob had the dream of the ladder. Shiloh, where the tabernacle stood. Hebron, when you're going to go, where the patriarchs are being buried. And of course, Jerusalem. Now, all those places, look at the map. They're all in that area of the biblical heartland of Judea and Samaria. Now, this area wasn't on the agreement in 1947. And when we established the modern state of Israel, the area of the biblical heartland, the area we were waiting for, the area we were praying for, it wasn't there. It took us 19 years till the 6 days war to have nothing less than a miracle to redeem this area. And I love to do this magic trick. If you look here, before, yeah, you see this? After. See the magic? Judea and Samaria, Golan Heights, Sinai Peninsula, all of this was released. And I say released because I believe that God gave the Jewish people the land. I read it in the Bible. And surely you agree with that. To call this place the occupied territories is the biggest joke. How can you occupy something that was yours? The same name of the places. You can point out to literally the place and say, Abraham just bought this city of Hebron. It says here in Genesis. Abraham stood here in the Oak of Moreh when he got promise of the land. It's the same place. So ever since 1967, the movement of people, of Jews returning to the land, building community after community, was a movement of settling the land as a fulfillment of prophecy. And when you walk the land and when you see the vineyards of Samaria growing, you remember the prophet said it's going to happen. Surely that's the place to be. But life there is not easy because it's such a crucial place. Our enemy makes everything possible to make our life as hard as possible. Attacks, stabbing, bombarding, stones on the road, intifada, everything you remember, everything that's on the news before the 7th of October, that's our region. Brave people holding the land. I love to call them modern day pioneers. And this is not something that stopped after the 7th of October. They're still claiming and trying to ruin our life there as well. On a daily basis, there are people, terrorists, trying to attack us. I want to show you this. This is a real video footage, was taken a couple of weeks ago, month ago actually, in the South Mountain of Hebron. This is a camera that was donated by Christian Friends of Israeli Communities, our organization. You know, Christians around the world get together and they donate to protect this community. And look at what the camera caught. You see, look at the upper area of the video. Crawling down under the fence, not in Gaza, in Adorah, the South Mountain of Hebron. That's what they had in their hand. On the left side, you see the bag with the M16. You see the hole in the fence. You see the bullets into the car. And you can only imagine what they were there for. You don't need to imagine. You just need to remember what happened on the 7th. It's the same scenario all over again. We talked about the evacuating communities of Gush Katif of Gaza. You know what was, again, happening in this region? You can see this map with all the colors. Represents the Oslo Accords. The attempt to separate different areas into our area and their area. We gave them weapons for them to have a police to control themselves in the Palestinian cities. I'm jumping here just to this attack that happened a couple of months ago. The terrorist on the right side, that's his day job. He works in the Palestinian police. They've received weapons from us. That's what we need to deal with. The story of Judea and Samaria is a rough story because people sometimes see what happens there in a flat move. This is the way Judea and Samaria looks. It's actually the mountains of Israel. Judea and Samaria. We always tend to say that 500,000 Jewish people who live in the area of Judea and Samaria, they need to protect themselves. And we're calling people to support us to protect ourselves. The truth is this. If we won't be on those mountains, all of Israel will be under attack. You see the damage that happened from Gaza on a sea level. Can you imagine what happened when the mountains are controlling all of Israel? And you give them a state? And you give them a place to develop the same thing they developed in Gaza? With the missiles and the tunnels and terrorism without even stopping them? Friends, this is a serious, serious situation. So what do we do in CFOIC? We try to help the modern day pioneers of today continue to strive and continue to protect their families in the journey of the Jewish nation returning to the land. 3 main elements. Number 1, I passed here a sign-up sheet. I don't know where it stopped. Make sure to go online to CFOIC or sign up here and get the news of what happens in the land from the people who live in the land, from the people who are there. We are working with dozens of different communities, and I need to tell you the honest truth. I'm being bombarded on a daily basis with communities that understand that at this moment, with all the challenges we're facing in Israel, our area is not on the priority of the list. You can imagine the security guy from a random community in Samaria calls the chief commander. Listen, we have a problem this week. I'm not going to share where, but there's a community that was attacked this week. They were found, a terrorist on the fence. They caught him. They don't want to publish it because of, not to make the people more scared. I just imagine they call the commander of the area and says, listen, you need to help us. We need more cameras. We need more drones. We need more fences. You know what they're going to tell you? There's a war happening in the south and in the north. I don't want to deal with you right now at this moment. You're not in our priority. Before the 7th of October, they were the priority. Right now, they're not. So they're coming to us. They're coming to Christian friends of Israeli communities, understanding that you guys are helping them protect their homes. So make sure to sign up to the list. Number 2, when you come to Israel, and surely this year in September, we will see you there, you come and you witness with your eyes what happens there. Sometimes when I talk, people tend to say, it doesn't sound normal. They live among you. Only a fence separates you? Yes, and less than that. If you came to Judea and Samaria, raise your hand again. You saw that with your eyes. This is the reality of how we live and where we live. Living a prophecy, it's not easy. Nobody said it will be a piece of cake. And the third thing is you're enabling the families to protect themselves. In every community, there are civilians. They're not army people. They're not IDF people. The IDF is all around. But in the community, we understood that the responsibility and the challenge to protect your home needs to be in our hands. Because when time comes, the army cannot be at all the places at the same time. We saw that. We experienced that on the 7th of October. We need to be there, and we need to help those pioneers protect their families. And we need to help them by making their life a little bit better. With a playground, with a music room, with... This morning I got a phone call from the medical center. One of the components in the ultrasound device doesn't work. They don't know where to bring the money from. That's what we're dealing with. We are in an isolated area, far from the big cities, and we are lacking the resources to help the people live and strive. If you believe in the Bible, if you believe that what we're doing here is God's mission in the land, this is where you need to look and put your eyes into. Connecting with the biblical communities of the heartland of Israel. We have some time for questions. But before that, I want to ask you from the bottom of my heart, continue to pray for us. Continue to make this a topic on your agenda. I know your pastor is all in, but I want you to continue, and you need to understand that you are advocating and you are sharing the story nobody else shares. And this is the power we need to expand And we need to show the world the reality we're living in. The media is done. Social media, very difficult. That's what we have. The people who are looking for the truth in the name of God in the Bible. Thank you. Shalom.
Hey, yes, let's give him a big hand. Okay, does anybody here have not a comment, but a question? Okay, just a second.
I think a lot of us might like to know, what is a safe room? Can you describe it? Is it a fortified room, or is it just a fortified door? Or please describe it for all of those that would like to know.
Good question. Good question. So, Israel had faced wars in the past. You know that. And the regulations of all the houses before the 80s was that every building had to have a shelter. In the case of a missile, I remember I was a kid in the 90s, there was the Gulf War. They threw scads from Iraq to Israel. In my juvenile mind, I imagined something like this. Only when I went to Washington, D.C. to the Air Museum and I saw the size of a scad, it's like a building. They threw to Tel Aviv, many, many dozens of them in all of Israel. Nobody was injured, nothing happened. So we had a shelter. But then they realized that in case of something that is biological or, gas or those kind of things, we need to have a safe room in every apartment. So since then, every new building that builds in Israel, you need to have one room, looks like a regular room, that has a way to close it, and there's a way to close the air that comes from outside and purify it. There's a system there, and it's a shelter. Even if there's an attack, this room will be safe. And I can share with you that even in private houses we have it. And I have a friend, they threw a missile next to the Ben Gurion airport. My friend's house, literally close. They got a direct missile into the house. His parents were there, hiding in the room. The whole home was ruined. The safe room, sheltered, safe. It comes with a lot of, cement. And it's like a shelter. It's a room that can be safe. The problem in the South was that they fought against the door. And sometimes the door wasn't locking from the inside. And some of them are old. They never try to see if the door is closed. So people weren't prepared and ready to stay in that place for 18 hours. I can tell you that since there's threats from the north with missiles, right now, in every sheltered room, there's water, there's some food, there's things that we need there in a case of an emergency. And the regulation says every new home being built need to have a shelter. Question, what happens in Judea and Samaria when people live in temporary houses? Answer, they don't have a shelter. They're asking for temporary shelters to bring them shelters. We're trying our best. It's very expensive. Serious problem.
We raise prayers for the people and the government. Would you speak about the government? Because we're getting information over here that it's Netanyahu's barely holding on. Would you share your thoughts on that, please?
As we speak, President Netanyahu is here in the U.S., just landed a couple of hours ago. He's going to talk on Wednesday afternoon here in the parliament, in the, where exactly? The Congress. To get the answer for this, you need to go back before the 7th of October. Because the story that happened in Israel on the 7th of October is actually connected to what happened in Israel in 2023. You remember demonstrations, how do you say it? The judicial. I'm Israeli. I don't know these sophisticated words. Demonstration on the streets. Bibi needs to go down, etc., etc. 5 elections in a row, maybe 4, maybe 6. I didn't count. It was every Wednesday and Monday we had election, again and again and again, until Netanyahu made a government. They have a majority. They have 60 plus people in his government, in this coalition. There are many people in Israel that dislike him, that think that he's been there for so long, it's too much, he's making bad decisions. Democracy. You can claim whatever you want, and it's okay. You can even demonstrate on the streets. What happened before the 7th of October was in a really bad place, where people in Israel demonstrated and also said, we are going to do things to damage the country. We will go on strikes. We will take our companies outside of Israel. And the worst was, army personnel, reserve, said, we're not going to go and fight if you're going to call us. The truth is that Israel was on a verge, looked like civil war. Now, I don't think it would ever happen. I really don't think it would happen. But the feeling was intense. There was a lot of tension on the streets. I'll give you an example. It was the end of the high holidays, the attack. In the beginning of the holidays, in Rosh Hashanah, people said, I'm not going to invite to my home 2 of my kids, that one thinks Bibi needs to stay and one needs to go, because there would be a lot of fighting about it. Really, it's true. They had a lot of arguments. That was in 2023. The war started. In the beginning, everybody was in unity. The left joined, Gantz, everybody was together fighting against what needs to be fighting. And the truth is, I don't think anybody would do anything different. But after 6 months again, you hear the voices again. Bibi, you're too long. Bibi, you're making bad decisions. You need to go, etc., etc., etc. I'll be completely honest with you. And it's on camera. So I cannot ignore if people are going to say, I need to say it's true. I believe in democracy. I think that the people love Bibi. But I think that at this point, at this moment, if you were a CEO of a company and there's such a big damage in the company, meaning the attack of the 7th of October, something so big, so massive, so critical, I think that the honest thing you need to do is put the keys and resign. At this moment, Bibi Netanyahu is holding to a chair that people think that with the mistake that was happening in the state, in the army, in the intelligence, if not being proved differently, he's the manager. He's the CEO. He needs to resign. The issue is that it's so political right now, and people think that if he's going to resign, it means that he's going to take all the responsibility, and everybody's going to say, we told you, he was always the one to be blamed. So it's a very, very sophisticated situation. Right now, the way it looks, he's doing everything possible to fight, and he's doing it well, and people are rooting for him, and people are supporting for him. In the end of all of it, the day after, we need to reconsider who is going to be out there. I don't think he's going to continue. I think he will say, I did my best. I fought the war. I made a huge mistake before the 7th to allow it to happen. I mean, it's not him personally, but he was the manager. It was the head. And he will resign, and somebody else is going to take over. That's the way I see it.
One thing that I was going to ask him, I don't know how many of you know this, but we left like billions and billions of heavy equipment in Afghanistan for the Taliban. And then our government won't allow any of the settlers to have rifles. You know what? I don't know if you knew that, but you want to comment on that?
Okay, so let's put it this way. In one of the shipments of gear that was sent by the U.S. to Israel, it was true that there was a request not to give this weapon to settlers. It is true. More than that, there are a couple of settlers, people who live in Judea and Samaria, that have financial sanctions against them, with blaming them of violence and all sorts of things. But in reality, needs to be said, with all due respect to the shipment, we have other ways to protect our homes. And every person in Judea and Samaria, and the truth is every person in Israel, understood the day after the 7th of October, they need to get a weapon. So they went and they did an exam and they got the license and they got and buy it or got it, or many of them serve in the army, therefore receive it from the army. But we have a legal way that is only making sense to protect our situation, our homes. People are driving in places when there are attacks all the time. And if you're not going to have the basic way to protect yourself, you're going to have a serious problem. So yes, the U.S. restricted people in one of the shipment to get it. Okay, we have other ways.
One other question I want to ask you, and this is from talking to different Israelis. Typically, Israelis can fight a war, for about a month or so, but the time comes they start running out of weapons, bullets, and they have a huge need. How much longer is Israel going to be able to do this without receiving the munitions and things, the weapons they need?
So it needs to be said that the U.S. has been sending and shipping equipment and gear and weapons and bullets throughout the war. Whenever you hear it, was in Prime Minister Netanyahu said something about it like a couple of weeks ago. There was one shipment that was jeopardized in question, generally saying the U.S. is a huge help and supporter of Israel. The truth is that President Biden as well, with all the criticism we have, with all the criticism of things that he should have said and he didn't say, and a lot of limitations is forcing on the battle war, is been doing a lot. And he's been doing a lot not because, I think it is a lover of Israel, but not only that. I think because the American people, in every survey, in every time they're being questioning about, do you support Israel? More than 80% say yes. And even, here, of course, we're preaching to the choir with the people who love Israel the most. But even in places that are not so famous to love Israel, still, people understand. Patriotism, loving America comes together with love of life, love of freedom, what things that Israel is standing for. And the truth and reality is, open your ears strong. Israel is only an excuse. The war Israel is fighting now is not only to stop them from attacking our homes. The truth is, we are fighting for the Western culture. And as we saw in the beginning with their calls, and we see in Iran, we are the small devil. America is the big devil. This is a war we are fighting for the Western society. And America understands, and every person with a love of life understand that this culture is a culture that needs to be standing against, and we say no more. And what Israel is doing right now in Israel is only the first stop for stopping them not coming to the West, because they say the West is next, and we've learned to believe them when they say this is their goal and this is where they're facing. I think before we are ending our time, maybe one other question, because I want to show you a last thing. Yeah. So when I finish these talks, I'm excited. I'm happy. I'm happy to be here. I'm blessed to be here, especially here now today. Preaching to the choir. People are happy talking about Israel. But at this moment, really at this moment, people are fighting. People are fighting. People are sleeping in tents, in houses, inside Gaza, in the north. People are evacuated from their homes For a month, they live in hotel rooms. In a month, they're going to be the new school year. There's not going to be school in the north this year. So, the last thing I'm going to ask today is this. Let's not forget, while we continue our life, while we're doing everything possible to continue and live life and support Israel and pray for Israel, there are people in Israel right now in a bad situation. So we need to pray for them and remember them. They're the wounded soldiers who gave their body and their soul to the country and to the nation. They're the families, the children and the wife that are home right now for months without their husband. They're the husbands themselves, the soldiers. People at their 30s and their 40s that are giving up so much on the process. The people that lost their loved ones. Adas, her family, and many, many, many orphans and widows. Of course, more than 120 hostages are right now, as we speak, under the tunnels in Gaza. So I finish with this and say, God bless them. May we all see the total victory of our forces, of our souls against this battle, against the bad guys. And I'm going to finish up with a blessing, a song of blessing to the soldiers of Israel. The subtitles are there, but even listening to the words and to the lyric, you will understand that all that was said today, everything that we said today, it's all another piece in the long-lasting journey of the people of Israel in the name of God. We are here in His name, and we are here living the prophecy He gave us. And we're here having life which is not easy, because we know that's the right thing He wants us to do, and we're doing it only by His name.
שברך אבותינו אברהם, יצחק ויעקב, הוא יברך את חיילי צבא ההגנה לישראל.
ייתן אדוני את אויבינו הקמים עלינו ניגפים לפניהם. הקדוש ברוך הוא ישמור ויציל את חיילינו מכל צרה וצוקה, מכל נגע ומחלה, וישלח ברכה והצלחה בכל מעשה ידיהם. ידבר שונאינו תחתיהם, ויעטרם בכתר ישועה ובעטרת ניצחון, ויקוים בהם הכתוב.
Amen. Let's give Shmuel a big clap offering again. Come here for just a second. I want you to turn around. Now, let me ask you guys this. How many of you have been to Israel or are going in September? Raise your hand if you've been to Israel. A lot of them. These are people that really love the nation of Israel. We're so grateful that all of you are here. And maybe we'll see you this Shabbat. Thank you. If you want to answer any questions, ask him questions. He's here. So thank you. You're dismissed.